Hello and welcome. This is Ali Hasnain at Hasnain Taqvi. Dear students, today we would be talking about conditionals. You at times are confused by their proper use. I guarantee you, if you pay attention today, this trouble would be over forever. Conditionals are like structures, essentially 4 types. Let's have this as a heading. The very commonly known conditionals we would deal with today. One is called zero conditional. Then you have the first conditional. Then the second. How do you write second? Then you have second conditional and the third conditional. 4 types. Since these are commonly used and you are commonly tested on these areas, we will focus on these 4 conditionals today. Talking about zero conditional, we must know the rules. You have 2 clauses actually. One if clause, which is a subordinate clause, and then after comma you get an independent clause. In the if clause, if you have present simple tense, in the independent clause you may have another present simple clause, and in that case your conditional structure is zero conditional. For the second option, that is first conditional, in if clause you find present simple tense, but in independent clause, instead of present simple you have future simple. That's your first conditional. These things should be on your fingertips, rules. Talking about the third, again if clause, and in that instead of present simple now you would have past simple. With this past simple you have independent clause with this modal verb would and plus V1 first form verb. Necessarily you need to stick to this structure then if you have past simple here. That was our second conditional. Then we have our third conditional, that in if clause would have past perfect tense, and in the independent clause this expression with modal verb would, attached to it have, would have, plus V3. That's the structure needed for the third conditional. Now our discussion so far has made it evident to us that to do well on this segment we need to be well familiar with these rules of tenses. So a basic review of what present simple tense means. When I say present simple, this is V1 plus SRES when depending upon the subject. That's our declarative assertive sentence. So whenever somebody says present indefinite or present simple, he or she means to suggest first form verb. He eats an apple. To make it into interrogative structure, you bring helping verb in the beginning, then base form of verb, and a question mark. Does he eat an apple? Our declarative sentence was he eats an apple. Apparently very simple things, but I tell you, at times you even tend to make mistakes in right use of verb with these basic tense structure. So no harm and need not to be shy on that account to review these rules. Does he eat an apple? That's an interrogative. You could have double interrogative. Let's say some WH word. Why does he eat an apple? You could have a negative sentence. He does not eat an apple. You could have this into interrogative version. Does he not eat an apple? Or why does he not eat an apple? So you are already familiar with these structures. What I need to focus on right now for your being able to do well on these conditionals is this rule, that whenever I say present simple, that means V1 SES. Now what other tenses you need to have understanding of? You have this present simple, present simple, present simple. You are familiar with that. Now talking about future simple. What is future simple? This is also called indefinite. It is simply using will or shall plus V1. Simple structure. Why will shall? Though they claim normally, especially the advocates of spoken expression, that this shall should not be used anymore. It is only will that you could manage with any subject. But it is subject dependent, and since we are dealing with grammar, we need to adhere to these rules. And your examiner may ask you this, like if I say I shall do it, it's different from saying I will do it. If you speak to an English fellow, he would take this as your future plan, and he would understand this as your insistence on doing something. So it's different from this. Hopefully you have understood. If I say this weekend I shall go to Murray, this is just a proposed plan. I may or may not go there. But when I say this weekend I will go to Murray, I am hell-bent on doing it. So you need to adhere to these rules. My point is, will, shall, first form verb, as has been done here. That is your future simple. And you have different structures here. To make an interrogative, you would say, will I eat an apple? Or shall I eat an apple? In our case, it should be, shall I eat an apple? I shall not eat an apple. Why shall I eat an apple? So you have a variety of structures which could be used there, and knowing them beforehand is helpful in fixing them if ever there is any error there. Talking about what else, tense, this, past simple. This is probably the simplest of all tenses. Okay, and the third tense that is involved in our conditionals is past simple. Let's have a review of that too. Probably the easiest tense. All you need is V2, whatever you're doing. Though separately we would learn where this tense is preferred in our routine expressions. But in conditionals, you simply need to be able to decipher a given structure in terms of past simple or present simple. So second form verb, wherever you say see, you declare it to be past simple. Like he ate an apple. To make it into interrogative, you use did, and then you bring in first form, because the V2 has already been used as finite verb. You have eat now. Did he eat an apple? So that's the structure you need to retain in your mind. What other tense? Past perfect. What is past perfect? Obviously, as something related to the remote past, and its verb structure says had plus V3. Wherever you have this structure, you should remember that the tense employed is past perfect. However, there are certain areas to be watched. Like If I say I have it, this have has to be understood as V1. And this is has, have, first form of verb, its second form is had, and third form had. So I have it is present simple. Then again, if I say, let's say this one, had. If with had, I don't use another V3, and I say I had it. This is V2 now, and that means you should label it as past simple. Your identity of the tense is very important in doing well on this conditional structure जो exams का structure है. बहुत ज़्यादा frequent questions on this domain in sentence completion, in correction work, even in sort of usage. You may have any format to be assessed on your skills in this domain. So, seeing the verb, you should immediately be able to label its tense. Talking about this would structure, and V1 formula is already given there, and then would have V3, this formula is there. Now we try to understand the concepts involved, because unless you understand the concept, if he gives you in a blank a supposed situation and you don't know this situation demands which tense, you would seldom be successful in picking up the right conditional. So we need to understand the concepts behind these things. Dear students, we need to understand the concepts that are related to these conditionals. Without them, of course, you can't make a clear choice. When we talk about zero conditional, essentially we are talking about 100% true facts, like science facts. You need to always see a given statement in this background, that the structure you are making through present simple combination with if should be valid under all circumstances. If there is any flexibility, like day-to-day facts you are dealing with, where there is like strong likelihood, they say strong probability, but not always the case. There you require this structure then, with present simple, future simple. This is the first conditional. Why have we not called it the first instead zero? Because it is no conditional actually. It is a sort of factual scenario, which not with just if, even with when you can always make this structure. Whereas you can't use when in first, second and third. And that's a different debate. But you need to see that when you are implying a very forceful assertion, you should stick to this structure then, rather this. Present simple? Oh no, not this one. You need to stick to this structure. Present simple, future simple. If instead what you are saying is imaginary, or maybe it is related to day-to-day scenario, but less likely, that means there is less probability of that happening, then you use this second conditional. Remember, both these conditionals actually imply present times or future times. They can aptly, even when you are using a second form of the verb, past simple, through this second conditional and using would V1, you are actually talking in terms of present times or future times. It's not talking about the remote past or past version. For the past version, it is the concept here, like third conditional. You always imply past perfect in if clause and would have V3. This is to show your regrets it is basically like the opportunity is lost already. You are talking about remote past or something which is not plausible anymore. Structural concepts, once you have them, it would become radically easy for you to go for the right structure. Now we see some examples in order to be able to see how those rules are adhered to. I've written some here, like zero conditional. The sentence runs, if a ruby is heated. You have to see the structure, the minor varieties, like is heated is a passive version of present simple. Ali heats the ruby is heated by Ali. So is heated, present simple. Now the likely possibilities with you with present simple in if clause, only two. Another present simple or future simple. You would not go for future simple because this is a scientific fact. If you endorse it, it temporarily loses its color. So whenever you heat ruby, it temporarily loses its color. 100% true. There cannot be any change in this scenario. So we need to only stick to this first structure because that is the structure to handle 100% fact-based stories or statements, scientific facts. Another sentence here. If white light passes through a prism, V1 with SES, this is your present simple in if clause. If it passes through a prism, it disperses, the light disperses. Again, present simple. That means which conditional? Zero. Science fact. Every time white light passes through a prism, it disperses. Based on being 100% true, you have no other choice. You cannot say if white light passes through a prism, it will disperse. That would be marked as incorrect. If there are 4 statements, every statement would have different tense. You need to simply find the one that deals with scientific fact. That is if clause present simple, independent clause present simple. And that is this structure then. If white light passes through a prism, it disperses. To understand better, this is a good scenario here. See, if ice melts, it changes into water. Can we say if ice melts, it changes into money or it changes into chocolate? Cannot be the case. When it cannot be the case and every time it has to be based on this fact, that means it is 100% true scientific fact. Right? Based on this understanding, we use present simple, and that is zero conditional then. There are some possibilities here. What? Like instead of if, you can obviously use when here. Every time with zero conditional, if can be changed with when. When a ruby is heated, it temporarily loses its color. Exactly the same. When white light passes through a prism, it disperses. No change to the meanings or sense. When ice melts, it changes into water. So, one option. The other option is that this subordinate clause can come after the consequence clause. Consequence clause is actually where the condition is built. Like when we say if a ruby is heated, this is your consequence result clause. It temporarily loses its color. Now you can begin with this clause. It temporarily loses its color if a ruby is heated. That way only you would not put comma in between two clauses. You would straight away make the sentence run on. Again, you can say it disperses, or you preferably take this white light as a subject. White light disperses if it passes through a prism. You may say Ice changes into water if it melts. So your if clause can come later. Switching over or interchanging the two clauses is acceptable. Nothing else. We will talk about probable mistakes that you come across on such tests later on. Right now we move to the second. This is strong probability but not 100% true. I have some sentences here. See, if you fail again and again, you fail V1. Subject has first form verb. That means present simple. Now the two possibilities. One, another present simple in the independent clause. Two, future simple. How would we decide that? By understanding whether the statement carries truth of scientific nature or ordinary fact. We see the statement. Somebody is failing again and again, is desperate. Should it be just present simple or future simple? Because not necessarily everyone becomes desperate. It is not 100% true. Some would rather be happy that they have failed to perform something and they would not be assigned that task anymore. And if again assigned the same task, they would fail again, fail better maybe. So the point is, this is not always the case. When it is not always the case, you are left with this second choice, which is first conditional for day-to-day strong probability. When I say strong probability, this actually means something here as well. That means this person is going to make other attempts too. Whereas when we go to the past conditional, there the probability reduces itself. We will talk about that later on. See, you will be desperate. See what tense? Will, shall, and V1. Will be desperate. Desperate is an adjective. Be is your verb with will, shall, first form verb. That means future simple. So present simple, future simple. Again, if you stay awake at night, you will feel drowsy during the day. It is a fact, but not always true. This person may be stuck with insomnia and may not sleep even during the day, or may not feel like sleeping, or it could be like being a nocturnal bird and sort of not exactly during the day even not sleeping. So I would say not 100% true. What I require is future simple then. With present simple, future simple. This is what? This structure. Present simple, future simple. Why? Because it's a day-to-day reality. There is strong probability, but it is not always the case. So we attach the concept to it as well to be able to understand better. Again, let's move to the third sentence. If he works hard, typical sentence, quite often you have heard of that. If he works hard, he will succeed. Why haven't we said he succeeds? Because if we say if he works hard, he succeeds, that means there is no other possibility. But you know our exam system, you know our teachers, you have read that story that talks about the cruelty of your paper setters. So those things coming into act, that may not always be the case. So if there is strong probability but not 100% reality, we have only one choice. What is that? Future simple with will, V1. This is using present simple, future simple. Now moving to the third type. Third type is past simple, would, V1. You have to understand the concept that it is visualizing something. When you are visualizing something, there is another thing important with reference to this past simple. We have already understood the rule of past simple that it requires V2. However, You know the be forms. In present they are is, am, are, right? In past they are was, were, and in participle they are, it is only been, actually one form. So our requirement is V2, and that is was or were. But the problem with this tense is, since we imagine things which at times are contrary to the fact, we preferably use this were only. Though was can also be used, but to be on the safe side, remember, whenever you have to employ any be form for this conditional which demands past simple in if clause, this second form should be were, not was. Like, if I were a bird, I would fly. If I were a billionaire, I would spend my money on the needy. If I were in Kalashakaku, I would do farming. So what am I doing? I am imagining things. There is this like less likelihood of that act. Let me explain this likelihood thing. It's very important. When I say something in present simple and future simple, present simple and future simple, how that possibility increases. Let's say, if I, let me use this sentence here. If I see her tomorrow, I'll talk to her. Now this actually is showing very strong possibility of my seeing that person tomorrow. It actually means that I keep seeing her daily, and on somebody's request I have committed that if I see her tomorrow, which is very likely, strong possibility that I will see her tomorrow, and on seeing her, this again is a strong possibility that I'll be talking to her with reference to this structure. You understand? Present simple, future simple, strong possibility. If instead I say, if I saw her again or saw her tomorrow, I would talk to her. Mind it, it has the same impact, like it's talking about future, it's talking about a plan, but this has less likelihood. It actually means when you have preferred this tense, the concept involved is that you don't see that person quite often. When you don't see that person, you are just conjecturing, just visualizing. If you see her, that is, if I saw her, that means you would not see her, and if at all you see her, you commit to this, I would talk to her. So there is this less likelihood on this end when you imply past simple in if clause. That's why I say strong probability, less likelihood. And we were talking about this be form, and I told you that it should be were always when you are using be. Otherwise, any verb, it is V2, like go, went, eat, ate, sleep, slept, no problem with that. But when be form, both are there, was, were, but go for were instead. You would be safe, rest assured. We have some sentences here. Have we done them? Like, if you were an American. Now this means he is not an American. This has this concept inherent in it. If you were an American, you would enjoy. What are we doing with would? We are using V1. This is our third structure here, which is second conditional, demanding past simple and would plus V1. If you were an American, you would enjoy greater freedom. If you lived in America, if instead we had V2 here, not of be form, but routine regular verb. If you lived in America, you would enjoy greater freedom. That is equally good. But remember, it has less likelihood. Why do I say less likelihood is important to be remembered? Because in your exams, he would give you blanks. and he would create a situation. You have to decipher on your own as to this situation demands what. And if you are not good at judging things, for example, I give you a sentence immediately. Tell me if it is science fact or ordinary fact. If it is hot, I'm using a structure. If it is hot, we switch on AC, or we will switch on our AC. What would you go for? See, the condition is general, and it's a general truth. If it is hot, we are not talking in terms of access to AC. We are talking about a rule. Obviously, if it is hot and humid, you turn on AC, so you would switch to that. And if instead I say, if he lives in Canada, he feels cold, or let me rephrase this, rather come up with a different sentence that you are already familiar with. Let's say, if the sun rises, it is a lovely sight. Should this be okay? Obviously not. See, if the sun rises, that's a fact. We have used present simple here, acceptable. It is a lovely sight. We have again used present simple. That means every time the sun rises, it is a lovely sight. It is not the case. Ask the people who are living in South Africa, or for that matter in our country, in Sibbi area, or even Sargodha. So you don't have this luxury. What was the sentence exactly? The statement that I gave you, if the sun rises, it is a lovely sight, cannot be true. If it is according to you something admirable, you may always say, if the sun rises, it will be a lovely sight. So choice of your structure is dependent on the concept involved. The stronger the understanding on this concept, the easier it becomes to pick the relevant tense structure. And all you then need to know is what rules, like what tense structure is required in combination. We are talking about this past simple, would V1 structure. Look at this one. I told you initially that at times we get confused by seeing had. We should not consider it past perfect, because past perfect in if clause is possible, but it is past simple. Why? For the sole reason that it is not followed by V3. Instead, it's a noun. So this had structure is V2. Being able to decipher a structure is of utmost importance. If I had money, comma, I would spend it on the poor. So correct structure it is. Like past simple, would V1. No problem whatsoever. If he ran away in time, he would save his life. V2, would, V1. Perfectly all right. Your examiner has to change things here, where there is a set of rules, he would violate them, and it is your job to understand as to how he has violated. So hopefully you have become clear so far. You know that whenever in if clause you see past simple, you next use would, V1. This modal verb you can always change. Let me go back a bit and then we would talk about the laws. See, apart from this science fact where you are using present simple, wherever you have a modal verb, like this was like first conditional, if white light passes through a prism, it disperses. No problem, because there is no modal verb here. Let's find modal verb. If you fail again and again, you will be. Now this will is a modal structure. This can be changed. And there's no problem even if I say this, you may be desperate. You have reduced the likelihood, because it is strong probability, but this probability can be reduced a bit. Still it would remain strong. but possibility wise. With present simple, this future simple modal verb can be changed with any modal verb. To your surprise, because most of our grammars don't tell this, this could even be might. And might is even further reducing the chance of that person's being desperate. So if I say, if you fail again and again, God forbid, you might be desperate. This apparently is a past form, but that is an exception. That is likely, that can occur. There's no problem. You can always change any of the modal verbs in any form, like will can be into would, could, should, might, but that has a separate impact. Preferably you stick to future simple here. Again, when we refer to this second conditional, since you have would plus V1, remember this would could be could, should, might. This cannot go back into present may or can. But this present intensity will can switch into may or might. That would reduce the impact or possibility. So see, if I had money, I would spend it on the poor. Important. If he ran away, important is the verb structure to be identified. V2 would V1. Let's now talk about the last but not the least. You know what is meant by last but not the least? It means order wise towards the end, but priority wise, like importance wise, it is equally important. Let's talk about that. Now let's move to the third conditional, fourth type. As is stated, in if clause you require past perfect tense, and in independent clause, which is consequence clause, you would have, and third form verb. I have some example sentences here with a bit of variety to enable you to see advanced structures. Had violated. In if clause, you know it to be third conditional. You require would have, third form verb. Now punished is also third form verb. Been is what is happening here. You might get confused unless you see that this is passive structure of the same. Like if I say I would have eaten an apple would have been eaten by me. So when we are implying passive structure, we have would have been and V3. Wherever there is V3, you can easily see that with reference to the helping verb, then that which structure it is actually. अगर ये have के बाद आ जाता, would have तो वो perfect वाला version आ जाता, but have been में passive active के बजाय passive version आ रहा है. Trying to understand passive voice here, I showed you towards the end we would give a brief on to the involved tenses as to how to convert them into passive, just briefly. And in another lecture we will have to get into detail of all tense structures and where they are to be used. But right now conditionals, let's understand this structure. If I had a choice, it might have confused you before you have understanding of the kind that tells you that with had you need V3. If we just say if I had a choice, that is past simple because we have simply used a second form of verb. But when I say if I had a choice, I have fulfilled the requirement here, which is had plus V3. If I had a choice, now the independent clause begins, I would have availed it. So would have plus V3. No violation has taken place, the structure is okay. All you need to see now is it okay for this tense structure, this condition where you are regretting something? Are we actually implying a regret here? Like yes, this man did not have a choice and he could not avail that. So he's visualizing or imagining something from the past. which is not going to happen now. He doesn't have this option available. He's like, if I had lived in America, I would have become a senator. The point is, this clause, if I had lived in America, shows that he doesn't live there anymore, or he is not like there in that country. So it's a regret, in a way, desire to revert to those good old times. This structure again is implied here. If he had died in Africa, he did not die there. If he had died there, he would have been transported. Again, this been comes and then V3, which means passive voice, like would have been transported to Pakistan. If he had died, he would have been. Now, what are the probable areas where your see the application? This structure is before you. If you dash, maybe you have the word now here. If you dash now, you have this verb miss the program. The options available in terms of conditionals. Obviously, program is not a scientific fact, so zero conditional will not be used. You have to pick from out of these three any, and whatever you pick, you simply have to make the verb agree with the fundamental combination. If you pick first conditional, it would be if you leave now, you will miss the program. Let's talk about second conditional. If you left, you can even write now. They use preferably in such structures then, but you don't have the choice of changing words. You simply pick the options available in multiple choice questions. So if there is no, you simply have your examiner desiring you to come up with this option. If this had not been there, if he left then, obviously miss would go into you would miss the program. If you are instead using this third conditional, if you had left then and would have, third form verb, missed the program. With these available options now, he may change things. Like he may use another will here in a running sentence where you are demanded to spot the error, or where there are 4 sentences, one is of this type. You should immediately understand that 2 future tenses together can never occur. That is a faulty structure then. Then again, if he is not using will here, he may be using, let's say, will have missed. If you leave no, you will have missed. That doesn't make any sense. Time frame is not being adhered to. So, faulty. Errors basically pertain to these verbs, and right use of verb is what you have to ensure. That is conditionals actually all about. Left, if instead we have had left here, the structure automatically goes wrong, because with had left we can't use would miss. We instead require this structure. So either we fix that, or we see what is the tense concept, like what is the statement desiring. It may be just requiring you to bring it to this left and would miss. So it's not a free will that you change, like if I work hard, I will succeed. If I worked hard, I would succeed. If I had worked hard, I would have succeeded. Though all 3 are correct structures, but it depends on the context where what is to be used, as we have rightly emphasized on the concepts involved. Once you are through with that, these slight changes that I have told you, just review them. if can occur later. This independent clause can start the sentence. Your modal verb can be changed, especially with this future simple. Instead of will, you could even have past form of could or would or might. Then here it obviously can be changed in any other thing. However, the sense changes a bit. Like if I met her, what did I say? I would talk to her. Now if instead I say, if I met her, I might talk to her. This means different. Like would talk is insisting that though he doesn't frequently meet that person, but on meeting he would definitely discuss that. But when I say I might, so even after meeting I may or may not. That sense changes here. Talk to her with reference to any subject. So once you are through with this, no problem. Whatever the tense, I would give you an assignment on conditionals and you would be seeing those situations and fixing where what tense is needed. We have two more things to be discussed before we wind up with this lecture. One is a bit of understanding of passive voice of the very tenses that are involved here, and two conditionals which are with when or before. Not that frequent. One is very frequent, but the other one is very awkward and unusual, but we need to understand them once. I would give an example or two on each and we would be done with today's lecture. See, already I've talked about the tenses involved in conditionals. Present simple, first form verb, SES according to the subject. So if we make a sentence of a simple kind, he eats an apple. Future simple, will, shall, V1. So he will eat an apple. Past simple, he, V2, ate, eaten, ate an apple. Of course you need to learn all the irregular verb forms. There are times trouble there. If you understand the rules, you need to know the right forms as well. He ate an apple now. This is past simple. Seeing this verb, you can immediately decipher it to be past simple. Then you have had plus V3. He had eaten an apple. Now my point is, once you understand these in active, these are active structures, you necessarily require to understand their passive structures too. And passive can only be made of a sentence that has a transitive verb, which means it takes an object, which again means it answers what question. If I say he eats what, the answer to that is an apple. This object has to be changed into the subject. So we write it here, apple and an apple actually. Transitive verb, an apple. Now the first thing is changing or bringing the object as subject and taking the subject as an object. Now this he, when it goes into object structure, it becomes him. Now comes the verb. You see, every passive form requires be form, and for present simple the be forms are like, we should mention them. Have I already? Yes, here somewhere. Ismr. Present simple, ismr. So an apple is, this is be form that we have used. The rule says be form plus V3 is, or third form of this verb, eaten. An apple is eaten, and before the object you use by. So what are the rules that we have come across? Knowing be forms, let's talk about them again. For present, let's say present simple, it is ismr. For past simple, it is was, were. Hopefully you can see this angle. For future, it is be itself. For continuous, it is being. And for perfect, it is being. We will talk about this at length once we deal with voice changes. Right now, what we need to understand is that any moment you see this verb structure, is MR and third form verb, you should be able to understand it as present simple tense and thereby apply the rules with if clause present simple, another present simple, or another future, like present simple and future simple. So if instead we have future simple, let's see how to change that. This is verb, we require third form. This is will, this auxiliary is always retained, and then you use for future be form of be itself. So rest of the changes are the same. That is, an apple will be eaten by him. Again, my assertion is to know that with this structure, be and third form verb, your understanding of the tense involved, no, it's not this, should be very clear. Like if I say an apple will be eaten by him, you should immediately know that this is passive voice of future simple, because will shall first form active, will be shall be third form verb passive. The same way you need to remember these rules. If it is he ate an apple, third form of ate, eaten, past form of be was, an apple becomes subject, an apple was eaten by him. So what you understand is that was eaten is past simple wherever. If it was done, now you should know next you require an independent clause would be one. If it was, or if, as I suggested, it should always be were. If it were done earlier, I would be satisfied. Now would be satisfied is again passive voice. I would love it. Now this is basically active. So when you use first form verb after would, that is active. When you have instead a be form and then third form verb, that is a passive. I would like you to review this too. Eaten is already third form available. Had auxiliary to be retained. An apple goes as subject. Especially the students with NUGFP program, they require to have very strong command over this domain, especially deciphering a given sentence. An apple had, no, you require perfect form, and for be the perfect form is been. We use it here. An apple had been eaten by him. Please remember seeing this verb structure, had been eaten. If you are to label it as some tense, you should immediately say past, perfect, passive. Because active has had V3, passive has had been V3. That's simple. Dear students, there are only two more areas that you need to be good at to be able to do well on this segment anywhere, in any format, any question involving conditionals. I assure you, if you practice a bit on the assignment that I will give you and review this, like understanding of the tenses and structures, you would have no difficulty, inshallah. These are the two more things. See, these tenses we have already managed: present simple, past perfect. There's another tense here, and it's a combination that you need to be able to make. It's not a hard and fast conditional, but obviously consequence clause relates to some action of when or before structure. See the change here, it's not if, it is when or before. And then again, you would have on sentence completion and on grammar many questions with before or after structures requiring you a specific tense. We would of course have that understanding later. Right now we are trying to decipher how this combination is made. Future perfect is what? It's like will have or shall have plus V3. That's its active form. And if you need to go into passive, will have been plus shall have been and V3. Like we retain our same sentence, I shall have eaten the apple. So seeing this verb structure, you are clear that this is future perfect. Now the apple will have been eaten. We don't necessarily require by structure here. The apple will have been eaten. So have been eaten gives us an understanding that we are implying past perfect. Now this is a specific conditional version where you require this tense sequence. With present simple, only future perfect. Like or not if, it has to be when. When you land in America, or for that matter it could be any place, not to say that I am fancied or fascinated by America. When you land in Kalashakaku, KK, you will have fulfilled your dream. This is a future prospect, some desire when once something happens, as a result something happens else. Like when you land in Kalashakaku, you will have fulfilled, future perfect. With present simple, when you land, future perfect. This perfect. The error could be, instead of this, he would say, when you land in Kalashakaku, you have fulfilled your dream. So you have is not the preferable choice with V1. You will have, you're talking about happening in future. When you reach me, I will have finished my dinner. So the structure, when and before. Again, before you go there, you will have forgiven his sins. So if somebody you are angry with and you go to meet him again, before you go to meet him again, you will have ignored his follies. This is how this structure is made, not too tough. And then again, not many errors that he could assess you in. You simply need to bear in mind this combination. And if there is an error, you could easily find out. This one again is very easy because all of you have been using it right from early childhood. When I reached the railway station, the train had left. So what is happening here? You are implying V2 and past perfect tenses we are already familiar with, had left. So this again is important. Before expression is taking past simple and the independent clause or consequence clause is taking past perfect. Before you go there, that is present simple. Before he did it, before he reached there, before, like let me make a sentence that might create a bit of humor too. I usually do that. Before I reached the clinic, the doctor had died. You say it the other way around, but obviously doctors are human beings too, and I keep telling them that they could die too. Before I reached the clinic, that is like past simple, the doctor had died. So that event occurred earlier and I reached later. So this understanding is a must, that in such sequence, in when or before clauses, you have past simple and past perfect. We have to example sentences here, just give a glance. When you get admission to a top class university, what we see in when clause, present simple. We have it in our mind that now, since it is talking about future plan and something as a result of that occurrence, so we need this future perfect structure. So when you get admission to a top class university, you will have satisfied your parents. They don't get satisfied easily. So you need to do something special. Again, another sentence, just give a glance. When Ali reached, this is on this second structure. We have already seen the first structure. When Ali reached the hotel, V2, in when clause, we need a past perfect structure next. When Ali reached the hotel, it had already closed down. So had, closed, that is third form verb, past perfect. Past simple, past perfect in when clause. Typical, easy to handle. Now, just quickly reviewing, today we have learned conditionals and talked in terms of the essential four that are recurrent. Your examiners keep asking things. We dealt about the concept, dealt with the concepts that relate to the usage of those structures. We talked about the tenses involved. Then we gave you examples as to how to handle. Well, that's all about the conditionals, and remember, the more you practice, the better you become. And you need to actually do them to the extent that they become your second habit in usage. And then again, the assignments I gave you, they would further strengthen your skills, inshallah. We would keep doing different technical things that are related to firm command of grammar. And stay with me, I'll stay with you. We'll inshallah have real understanding of this subject. Thank you very much indeed.